fans, welcome to Buck Life, the Hardcore Milwaukee Bucks fan podcast made by Hardcore Milwaukee Bucks fans for Hardcore Milwaukee Bucks fans. And right away, I'm going to go ahead and let you take a breath here because it's been a busy week or two since the NBA draft. We have a lot to cover. My name is Jacob Anderson. With me, as always, is my co-host Chuck Schilling. How are you tonight, Chuck?
Not too bad. It's kind of crazy. We were kind of slacking on recording episodes because nothing happened between the end of the season and the NBA draft. And who would have thought that 10 days later, here as we record on the 4th of July, actually it's probably 11 days, but so much has happened in the last week and a half. Real quick, before we get going, I just want to remind people, follow us on Twitter, Buck Life Podcast. Same on Facebook, Buck Life Podcast. If you have any comments or feedback, bucklifepodcast@gmail.com. You might see a theme here. That's how you reach us.
And you will prosper if you do so.
Exactly. Same on YouTube. We're also on YouTube. Subscribe, share links. That's how you get views. All the Facebook and YouTube algorithms, you have to be shared to get in people's timelines. So, we do get over 100 listeners / viewers combined every episode. So share away. We appreciate it. So just wanted to throw that out there start. And, I guess, I declared the draft the beginning of season 2. So this is the official first normal episode of season 2 of Buck Life as we kick off the 2016-2017 championship season.
Absolutely. I love the optimism there.
It's going to be a tall I know one of our first subjects we'll be talking about is the tall task it's going to be to overcome the Western Conference powerhouse of Golden State. But you've got the schedule. Where are we headed first?
Well, yeah, we are going to talk about the Golden State Warriors, even though this is a Bucks podcast. And by the way, there's no guest this week, just with so much to cover. And we're actually recording this on the 4th of July. We knew it would be kind of a hard get, so it's just me and Chuck.
Everyone's got their 4th of July plans. Ours just happened to be together. We're going to go watch the Waukesha fireworks at the Waukesha County Fairgrounds. One of the best in the area, in my opinion. I don't know where everyone else is going, but I've been to a few, and this is one of the best.
Cheap plug.
Yeah. Hey, I've got no affiliation with them. I will always plug good products.
Okay. Why not just plug
random fireworks shows? I know. So, yeah.
No, like I said, we have a lot to get to, though. But talking about when we were going to record this next podcast, I kind of wanted to wait until the Kevin Durant shoe drop because I kind of thought free agency would kind of go as that went and everything would go from there. But I was wrong. I mean, there's been a lot that has happened, but it just so happens that we decided to record on the day that Kevin Durant announces that he's going to be signing a 2-year contract with the Golden State Warriors, which is insane. I mean, I called it a while ago just because I had heard all these things that winning was the most important thing to him. And I just felt that quite frankly, Oklahoma City collapsed after leading Golden State 3-1. Not just in losing the series lead, but in those individual games. I mean, they were up big in just about all of them where they had the chance to clinch, and it just kind of fell apart. So, wow, this is nuts to me. This is the new super team. I mean, you have the team that went 73-9 last year, breaks the all-time wins record for the regular season, and now you add a guy who's a perennial MVP candidate and a guy who won it 2 years ago. Just your initial thoughts on the signing.
Pretty much everything you just said. You have a team that just set the record for the most regular season wins, and they add the guy who was the MVP prior to the current MVP. Steph Curry's obviously won back-to-back MVPs, but right before that was Kevin Durant, and his name has been in the discussion for MVP for every year for the last 5-6 years. So to add that caliber of player, it's kind of crazy that Golden State even has the cap room to do that with the team they've already got. So it's hard to say that anyone but them is the favorites. They are the favorites as of right now, barring some injury happening. But even still, they have such a roster that they'll be fine if one player gets injured for even a significant stretch of time. They should be able to keep winning without any one player.
Well, and you talk about them having the cap space. I mean, they're very, very fortunate that, first of all, you get Steph Curry to sign a contract. I mean, literally just before he goes into the stratosphere and becomes this superstar MVP candidate type. I mean, I think he's making about
I'll pull up his contract.
More, but by comparison, that's only roughly 20-25% more than Matthew Dellavedova, who we're going to talk about later. But I kind of thought, especially it looks like it's pretty much foregone conclusion that Russell Westbrook's going to leave after this year, or this coming season with Oklahoma City, and now they might even trade him just to start the rebuild. Because you would think with Kevin Durant leaving that's the obvious route for them to go.
It's got to be the obvious route. And just for the record, Steph Curry's contract, last year of his contract coming up, $12.1 million, which is an absolute steal compared to some of the other contracts. Right? I mean, the last 2 years they got the NBA MVP for $10.6 and then $11.4 million, respectively. And they've certainly got someone who's currently the front runner for the MVP this year at 12.1.
It kind of reminds me like the NFL, like Seattle, for instance, when they were paying Russell Wilson like $400,000. They already had a Super Bowl contending team.
Yeah.
It helps when the most important or your best player makes nothing. You can put that team around them.
Even the Packers, when they won, Rodgers had signed his first extension, but it wasn't big money. And Clay Matthews was on his rookie deal. Any of these sports, if you're able to play someone who's MVP caliber and pay them not a max contract, it's going to help the rest of your team. So this Golden State is certainly benefiting from that, though next year Steph Curry is going to get paid.
You would think just a little bit. I guess the next question is, it's hard to fathom what they're going to look like. And besides the fact that you're adding Kevin Durant, they are going to be much different. I mean, Harrison Barnes who signed a maximum contract offer with Dallas, and obviously I would think Golden State's not going to match that offer now, given that Durant plays Barnes' position. They had to move Andrew Bogut, which today they moved him to the Dallas Mavericks for a second rounder, which is basically a cap dump. So, it's not like they're going to have the same team plus Kevin Durant next year. It is going to be a little bit different.
It'll be a little different. Bogut, as much as I love him, he's been injured. He's kind of...
Well, he broke his fibula.
He is what he is at this point, and it's still a quality big, because in the NBA, quality bigs are so lacking. But I think with their style of basketball, I think we'll be okay without him. And certainly Kevin Durant's an upgrade to Harrison Barnes. There's no way around that.
Well, the way it was explained to me by a friend of the show and frequent guest Dan Helsel, Grand Admiral Dan, is that through some type of maneuvering, Golden State may be able to bring back like a Festus Ezeli. Either way, at that center position in that starting lineup, you're not going to need much. And I think Golden State will probably explore more of what they call the death lineup, which was Draymond Green at center. They had Andre Iguodala playing the 4. Then you had Klay Thompson, Steph Curry, and who am I missing?
Harrison Barnes,
yeah. So now you have the death lineup with Draymond at center, Durant, who could probably play the 4 if you need him to, Curry and Thompson, and then it could be Iguodala, it could be they're pretty deep regardless of the guys they're going to lose this year. So again, this obviously makes them the overwhelming favorite to win the NBA title, even with Cleveland back and all 3 of their big 3 healthy. I don't see how. The betting lines haven't come out yet, but I'm sure it's going to be highly in favor of Golden State. And I just think, as fun as they are to watch, and people, I know we like to build people up, bring them down. That's just kind of what we do with the media and us as fans. But people were hating on Golden State last year just because they got so good. But they are fun to watch, and I don't think you can deny that. Now you just add to that factor. I'm already putting a patent out for this. I'm going to call it Ball Swing City, because imagine that ball floating around the perimeter with Dre, Steph, Clay, and Kevin Durant.
Are you suggesting they bring in Bo Ryan as some sort of assistant coach?
Oh my goodness,
position?
Bo would he'd be fapping like crazy with this possibility. All he would need is Greg Steensma in the middle, and he's good.
Yeah. I with the roster makeup at Golden State, I would not be surprised at all to see Kevin Durant playing a stretch 4 quite a bit. I know he's played primarily the 3 throughout his career, but Golden State goes with those smaller lineups, like you said. So there's no reason he won't potentially be doing that. And I agree they're the overwhelming favorite. It remains to be seen how the chemistry works out. But unlike Miami, when they brought in 3 new superstars, you're only adding 1 piece to an already team. So it's really just a matter of Kevin Durant integrating with the remainder of the team, which is much different than completely rebuilding a team like Miami did. Was it 7 years ago when they first put together the big 3? So plus Kevin Durant has always seemed like he's I'm sure he's got a bit of an ego, but he's always seemed a little less of an ego than some of those other players. So,
and he's deferred to Russell Westbrook at times and vice versa.
Yeah, exactly. So I think this integration will be less painful than Miami was. And Miami obviously won 2 championships. They figured it out eventually, but they did have some growing pains. I expect less growing pains from what Golden State adding Durant than what we saw the last time we had this sort of superpower team.
That is
built.
A great point. I didn't even think about that. It might take, like you said, with just one guy coming in, less time for all those guys to assimilate and kind of get with the program. My next question would be, does this pretty much seal Golden State and Cleveland as the NBA Finals matchup for the foreseeable future? LeBron's going to be locked up long term. The other 2 of the big 3 there are locked up long term in Cleveland. Kevin Durant, even though he signed a 2-year contract with an opt-out after 1 year, it's being reported that he's going to stay there long term. This isn't an experiment for him. I can't really see another team in either conference stepping up to take that away. The only team that I could have seen for Golden State would have been Oklahoma City, but now obviously that plan's gone to shit.
Yeah, I'd say they're the favorites. Anything is certainly possible, especially you get down in the playoffs, you get injuries. One player being injured changes everything. San Antonio wasn't that far off of Golden State this year in the regular season. Granted, they kind of floundered in the playoffs, and that was unfortunate. I penciled those 2 in, and Oklahoma City really took it to San Antonio. And credit to Oklahoma City in the finals or in the playoffs this year. They outperformed what I thought they would do. In the East, it's hard to see someone competing with Cleveland. I think the West, you've got San Antonio, I think is still going to be they're going to be behind Golden State, but they can still compete.
And they're going through
Popovich is still a hell of a coach. Yeah, they are. And, Tim Duncan doesn't have much left in him.
I heard today that he's leaning strongly towards retirement. And also today, Pau Gasol signed a 2-year contract with San Antonio. So that would lead me to believe that maybe the writing's on the wall for Duncan there.
Yeah. Yeah, they're probably in their last hurrah, 1-2 years left. But then you're going to have some young up-and-coming teams like, how long is it till Minnesota potentially is going to we've compared the Milwaukee Bucks and the Minnesota core before, and I think both those teams are a couple years off from being finals caliber teams, but certainly I think this year Cleveland and Golden State, maybe even 2 years, but 3 years from now, so much can change, whether it's injuries, whether it's Giannis turning into a freak, whether it's Karl Anthony Towns or Wiggins or whoever, there's all these young players that we don't know what they're going to be. They could be the next LeBron, the next Steph Curry, the next Durant, whoever.
Well, and you talk about young teams or teams with young cores. Boston is still a wild card in all of this. They tried desperately to unload their pick this year for a superstar-esque player. Couldn't get it done, but they signed Al Horford, I think, with the hopes of luring Kevin Durant because there's a report that those 2 had a strong interest of playing together. But they still, they signed Al Horford. They have assets galore with all these draft picks still coming from Brooklyn. They may not be done wheeling and dealing. So if they think Cleveland is potentially vulnerable, maybe they ante up and trade for Russell Westbrook or trade for DeMarcus Cousins like it's been rumored forever. It's really going to be fun to see how the rest of the offseason plays out because this is the craziest offseason for player movement I can ever remember. Add in the fact all the crazy money that's being thrown around, and you can think a guy's value is this, and then you see the numbers he gets, and you're just blown away.
With the salary cap going up so much over the next few years, these contracts just look absolutely insane. The money, you look at what Dellavedova, what we signed him to an offer sheet, and if you would have told me a year or 2 ago, I would have called you crazy. But in this market, it's probably, if anything, maybe a slight bargain compared to some of the other contracts thrown out there. And you're right with Boston. They've got so many draft picks going forward, and those Brooklyn draft picks are going to be good picks for the next, I think they have 2 more years of Brooklyn draft picks still. So they're
unprotected.
Yeah, unprotected draft picks from a terrible team for 2 more years. So, they're going to have so many pieces to either bring in a top player. They tried to move that pick this year, but when they couldn't, they picked who they thought was the best player. It wasn't a pick for this year. And if they keep doing that, they could build something really special because they've got money to spend on veterans. And they're a big market, so they can attract those veterans like Al Horford or maybe even trade for Westbrook, like you said. And at the same time, they're going to have assets to still get young potential studs, especially if God forbid they get a first or second pick. I mean, this year is third. If they get a first overall pick from Brooklyn, I mean, they're going to have their pick of anything, or trade it for whatever the hell they want.
Whatever player that's available.
So, yeah, Boston is definitely an interesting team, in the East. Atlanta, they did better than I thought they would in the playoffs, and that was without, what's his name, who got stabbed by the New York police, broke his leg. Cephalosha. He just won. If you, I don't know, people who follow criminal things, I follow that because of my political nature. But he won his case against the New York Police Department, pending. He's considering bringing a civil lawsuit against them. And the footage of the way this went down is pretty damning against the New York Police Department. So I would like to see him personally do that. But Atlanta's an interesting team. Toronto, they finally had their first ever, they won a series, and we kind of got used to them choking in the playoffs, but they actually showed signs of life. So I certainly think Cleveland's the favorite, but in the playoffs, we've seen it time and time again that crazy things can happen, especially if someone's injured, whether it's an injury that keeps them out or just a nagging injury. So if I was betting on it right now, I'd say the next 2 years, Cleveland, Golden State, and year 3 from now, all bets are off.
And I'll throw another team out there that I think could be a surprise to maybe jump up and upset the Cavs. The Indiana Pacers, I really like what they're doing this offseason. They're bolstering their bench. They brought in Al Jefferson. They also traded the 20th pick in the first round this year for Thaddeus Young, who is a severely underrated stretch 4, also can play some 3, nice athletic player. And Paul George is still coming back from that injury, so his confidence is going to be growing. And then they make the move for Jeff Teague, going from George Hill to Jeff Teague. I don't know, that seems kind of lateral to me, but we'll see. Maybe it's going to be a better fit for him.
Yeah, it's pretty close to lateral on paper, but, obviously for some reason they thought it was a better fit, and maybe it will be. The Paul George thing that's absolutely true. I'd imagine he's back at 100% this year. That was one of the more gruesome injuries you'll ever see in any sport. It's right up there with Bogut and all any of the injuries where you know what I'm talking about. A limb snaps clean in half.
And what a kick to the testes that he's doing it, representing his country in a essentially meaningless contest. I mean, or meaningless entire experience. Like,
right.
Okay, that's great. You get the gold medal maybe, but it's too bad. I really am rooting for the guy because in doing something selfless, it screwed him over in the long run.
Well, and he was, before that injury, he was in the MVP conversation. He was damn near, he was getting triple doubles or near triple doubles almost every single night and really filling the stats up. So it would be nice for Indiana, another smaller market team like the Bucks, and the NBA in general to have another player of that caliber. Because as much as I'm first and foremost a Bucks fan, absolutely Bucks. But once the Bucks are out of it, I want to watch the playoffs and I want to see good players have competitive games. The playoffs this year, especially the Western Conference Finals and the NBA Championship, those were both exciting series. Like 7 games and close games, hard fought. That's what I want to see. So adding Paul George into the mix certainly is good for the NBA.
Well, before we move on to the Bucks and their offseason, I got to ask you, as a former Sonics fan, is it a little bit vindicating or maybe a little bit ha-ha seeing Kevin Durant leave Oklahoma City? Or are you still at the point where you don't hold anything against Oklahoma City?
Yeah, I saw that and I thought about it because I don't hold anything against Kevin Durant or the players, especially Durant when they moved, and same with Nick Collison was pretty outspoken about it because he was originally from the Seattle area. They said nothing but the right things about Seattle. It's all Clay Bennett. He can go fuck himself. And same with, I forget the name of the mayor of Seattle at the time. He can go fuck himself too. So to me, the fans of Oklahoma City, they didn't really have anything to do with the Sonics being stolen. So for them, I feel bad. I get it. We've gone through this with players leaving. Ray Allen was gone, and it sucks. And Brett Favre went to the Jets, and whatever else. And it hurts as a fan. You root for these guys, you root for your team, but you also develop an emotional attachment, whether it's rational or not, with these fans. So for the Oklahoma City fans, I feel a little bad for them. For the Oklahoma City ownership group, that's a little bit of karma for them, that they never won a championship with this core. And I would not be sad if Oklahoma City never won a championship. That's their fans. They've got great fans. When they first made the playoffs, you saw the crowd there sell out, very loud, similar to how Golden State was last year, or 2 years ago when they started getting in the playoffs. They're hungry fan bases. It's the same way when Milwaukee, when we seemingly have a legit team, our fans show up and they're excited and they're great fans. But for the ownership group, I don't want them to win anything.
Well, I think I know of a way to get great fans to show up, or at least some fans to show up, and maybe that would be signing a high or big name free agent. I don't know if I can say high caliber or not. This is the most out of left field thing I can remember as a Bucks fan for quite some time, is that the Bucks and Dwayne Wade have mutual interests. At least that's what's being reported, in the media right now. I guess to start off, this can't really happen, can it? I mean, my gut tells me that he was trying to use as many suitors as he could to get more money from Miami. So we're just basically the leverage play here. But I also heard a report that the initial contract offered to Dwayne Wade from the Miami Heat this offseason was an average salary of $8 million per year, which sounds great to you and me, but when Matthew Dellavedova signs an offer sheet that averages $9 million a year, it's kind of a kick to the scrotum for a guy that's won 3 titles for your franchise. So perhaps he's that pissed off and that much like, I'm done with you guys, I'm not even going to talk to you, that maybe there is some interest. But as it stands, it's Monday, July 4th, and Dwayne Wade is scheduled to meet with Bucks ownership in New York on Wednesday the 6th. So it's great that we have a meeting. It would be very cool, and I'd try to be as optimistic as I could if he signed with the Bucks. But to me, basketball-wise, it just does not make sense.
Yeah, it doesn't make sense. I don't want it to happen. If the dollar amount is low enough, it's not something I will hate.
I don't mean to interrupt you, but I will bring up. It was reported today, Dan Le Batard reported that the new Heat contract offer, now that Durant signed, was 2 years, $40 million with a player option for the second year. So it's going to cost you over $20 million a year, and it's likely it's going to have to be at least a 3-year deal.
Yeah, I don't want anything to do with it for that money. That's just it. I kind of get the connection. He went to Marquette. Obviously, he'd probably be very, very popular with the fan base here in Milwaukee. He's got the ties here. But if we were in 2 years down the road, and Dwayne Wade doesn't age for 2 years. 2 years down the road, Giannis, Jabari, maybe Thon, they've all improved, and we're at that point where we need that one last piece to put us over the edge. Maybe then Dwayne Wade, but 2 years from now, Dwayne Wade is going to be 2 years older. But we're not at a position where we need that one final piece to put us over the edge. So I just don't see any reason for it. It'd be a waste of money. And more importantly than the money, it would be a waste of touches. He's taken touches from someone.
Right. And you talk about what were the Bucks' needs coming into this offseason, and it was to stretch the floor, get more three-point shooters. You need more defense, both down low and on the perimeter. And to be honest, Wade, he doesn't really provide those things. I believe he shot like 16% from 3 last year, obviously on a low amount of attempts because he's not a three-point shooter. His free throw attempts have been down, and his athleticism is declining. He was pretty healthy this year, but that's really more of an outlier. For the last few years, he hasn't really played what you would want, out of a franchise player. And the guy's 34 years old. Yes, he can still play with the right role and with the right team, but right now it needs to be all about developing Giannis and Jabari. And despite the fact that Wade has won championships and you would want him to be a coach on the floor kind of thing, I just don't see how him coming in and being the man of Milwaukee is going to develop Giannis and Jabari's games. In fact, I think it's the opposite.
Absolutely. It's the money is less of an issue than the fit, the taking away touches. And I did pull up the stats. He was 7 for 44 last year. So minimal attempts, but you're right, just under 16%. And for his career, 28% from 3, 28.4. But that's not, his role is not the right fit for Milwaukee because he's a slasher, and that's what we want to stretch the floor so Giannis can be the slasher, not Dwayne Wade. So I hope it doesn't happen. You heard my groan when Jake was just talking about it. Yeah, it was a little staged, but that was my original reaction when I first heard the news. 4 days ago, 3 days, whenever that broke. Initially, that was exactly my reaction. I want nothing to do with it.
In a perfect world, say even at that kind of money, as long as you can keep your core together, I suppose it's fine. And if Wade was okay with coming off the bench and we say, okay, you're going to lead the second unit, go crazy, maybe it wouldn't be so bad. Then he can play his style of game, get to the hoop, just cause havoc down low. But I don't see him being able to take that kind of role, especially
not at this point
taking
in his
an
career.
ego hit,
Yeah.
coming to Milwaukee. He's coming here to be the man, and really, I'm guessing just to kind of shove it in other teams' faces. And maybe he's just trying to get as much money as possible. But if he comes here, he can't start unless you move. I'm guessing one of Jabari or Middleton to the bench, and I don't like that idea whatsoever. Those guys, the core three, need to play together. That's one of the things that they haven't done enough of so far in their young careers is get those guys all minutes on the court together. So if it actually happened, part of me would be great. Let's make some money off the ticket sales, sell some jerseys. But I think I would feel similar to Monroe last year in that, yes, it's cool we signed a high-profile guy, but in the back of my mind, I'm thinking about on the court that it's just not a good fit. So, Dwayne Wade, I think it's a polarizing thing. I've seen so many people in extremely on one side of the debate and on the other side as well. So I guess if anything, whether you sign him or not, you at least got people talking about Milwaukee and him considering Milwaukee. Yes, that is a big deal. I will concede that. But
that's 2 years in a row we've had big free agents consider Milwaukee. So that is certainly something the new regime, Jason Kidd, the new owners, they've kind of paved the way that Milwaukee isn't the Siberia of the NBA. That'd probably be Sacramento right now.
Yeah, no one knows what the fuck is going on over there. At least Philly has a semblance of a plan. I have no idea what the Kings are doing. Real quick, I do also want to bring up, it's kind of the TMZ part of the show. Supposedly, Jason Kidd dated Dwayne Wade's wife, Gabrielle Union, in high school and dumped her in front of a big group of people and basically humiliated her. At least this is what I'm reporting secondhand. They were talking about it on the radio. Awkward much?
Yeah, that's... I don't even know what to say to that or how to react to that. Obviously...
Could you coach someone that smashed your wife?
No.
Okay.
Yeah.
That's what I thought.
No, I could not. I'm speechless over that. I did not hear that. You caught me off guard.
Yes.
I was not ready. I was not ready for that accusation to be thrown out there. But yeah.
And the other thing I'd like to point out is that as of now, we can't sign Dwayne Wade. We only have about $5 million of cap space. That's including Plumlee's cap hold right now. So you'd have to make another move.
The one positive is you'd have to think if we were doing that it meant Greg Monroe was on his way out. So, if you're trading Greg Monroe for Dwayne Wade, it makes it a little more palatable. But I still don't want to do it. I just want to trade Monroe and move on from him. Get some young assets or future picks, whatever we can get for him, even just cap relief. But yeah, that would be. It seems that the only way to make a Dwayne Wade signing work would be to have to trade Monroe.
Well, it is crazy to think that with all this going on, there's still two big elephants in the room, and that is Monroe and Michael Carter Williams. It almost feels like there's this unspoken thing going on where we are almost acknowledging they're not going to be back, but we're not hearing anything as far as rumors, destination possibilities, anything like that. So I would hope with the money that's being thrown around right now that you could get someone to take Greg Monroe, essentially, because that contract's got to be looking pretty decent compared to Ryan Anderson signed from. There's a lot of mediocre guys that are getting paid more than Greg Monroe right now.
Yeah, and his contract isn't. There's not much length left on it because it's a player option after next year, right?
Yeah, which
and
he'll opt out of.
He'll have to, with the money being thrown around, he has to opt out after that. So he's essentially an expiring contract this year. So the contract has value, and it'll be interesting to see if we trade him or if we just hang on to him. I have to imagine he's coming off the bench if we bring him back. Yeah.
And it's not outrageous to have a guy making that money off the bench, at least now.
No, not anymore. And he looked better off the bench than he did as a starter last year. So let him go up against backups and stuff his stats and then sign a big contract the next offseason.
Or we trade him.
Or sign and trade or whatever. Yeah, whatever we have to do.
Well, the Bucks did make some moves, signing some free agents. The two free agents that we signed so far, Matthew Dellavedova signing a 4-year offer sheet coming from the Cleveland Cavaliers, which it was reported today that they're highly unlikely to match. And then Mirza Teletovic coming from Phoenix, who also played under Jason Kidd in Brooklyn, signing a 3-year contract for $30 million. I believe Dellavedova's contract was 4 years, 38.
4 years, 38, yeah, for Dellavedova.
As you said, you threw out those numbers a year ago, and you're probably thinking, like, Jesus, what the hell were they thinking?
Yeah, it's Drew Gooden money just a couple years ago, which I was furious about from the start, and that was an absolute fucking disaster. But, this is the new $4 million a year, apparently.
This is the mid-level money.
I think it's even less, maybe even less than mid-level. I don't know where the mid-level number sits at right now, but yeah, it's not. These are value contracts in today's NBA, which is kind of crazy. But
well, and I gotta say, even though I really, really wanted the Bucks to just sit out free agency completely, or at least sit out the first few weeks, because it almost reminds me of an NFL offseason where the stupid money gets thrown out right away. I know that's not realistic, that everybody has cap space, they need to use it. But knowing that, I do like both of these signings because they check off some of the boxes for the Bucks' biggest needs. One would be the three-point shooting. Teletovic had a career year from 3 last year. Dellavedova, I think, is like a 40% three-point shooter throughout his career. Granted, it helps when you play with guys like LeBron that can draw some double teams and he can kick out to you for open shots. But you'd like to think that's going to continue here in Milwaukee with Giannis playing a similar role. But so you get the three-point shooting. Teletovic is a stretch 4. That's becoming pretty much the norm. It used to be kind of a quaint little thing that they would do or teams would have in the NBA, but now it's kind of like the norm. So you need to have that stretch 4. And you also look at Teletovic isn't much of a defender, but Dellavedova is known for being defensively quote-unquote gritty and all the white guy stereotypes. But we needed perimeter defense, certainly. That was a huge weakness for us last year.
Yeah, and we kept saying what we want at the other guard spot next to Chris Middleton was 3-and-D. And Dellavedova certainly seems on paper to fit that mold. He had 41% from 3 last year. 40% for his career. Well, I think it's 39.8. Yeah, 39.8% for his career. So he hits the 3 at a respectable rate. He is known to be kind of a pesky defender. And
some called him dirty in the past.
Yeah, he has had that. He's one of those guys that I think if he's on your team, you're gonna love the hustle. You're gonna love the I don't know, smart plays. But if you're on the other team, you're gonna say, oh, that was a little dirty.
Yeah.
But if he's on your team and he's getting away with it, you kind of like that.
Yeah, well, the Bucks kind of need some, I don't want to say dirtiness, but they need some toughness and some attitude. And, it's funny to think that the he's not little, he's 6'4", but the Aussie scrappy white guy is going to bring the toughness and attitude. But it's something that we've lacked. We finally saw when you piss off John Henson, he can be that way and actually play like a man, but that's maybe twice a year.
Yeah, I wish John Henson would play with that fury or motivation, whatever you want to call it. When we see it, he's a phenomenal player, and then when you don't, he just kind of disappears. But yeah, that's I think Dellavedova is a great fit. There was always talk. I think at the last trade deadline there was talk about maybe pursuing him. Didn't happen, but clearly there was interest on our end. And obviously Teletovic, I don't even know how you pronounce that name. Anyways, his defense leaves a lot to be lacking, so you're not going to want to put him out there with too many other poor defenders like Jabari or if we keep Greg Monroe. But you can cover that up. You can cover up one bad defender. If you have really good defenders, you can cover up 2, but that's about it.
During the recording of this, we have another Woj bomb. The Golden State Warriors have agreed to a deal with Zaza Pachulia, 1 year, $2.9 million. So there's your token starting center for them. And they continue to have the Bucks connection. I mean, half their team is like former Bucks or guys that should have been Bucks.
They're basically the alternate universe Bucks. The what could have been is what Golden State is. So that's I certainly think that Zaza Pachulia at this point gives you at least everything Bogut did. When you factor in injuries, Bogut's probably still a better defender, but Zaza's probably a little more mobile and a little better offensively at this point in their careers. But certainly on, I think, overall impact on the game, it's at least a wash compared to Bogut. And at 1 year, $3 million, that's nothing.
Literally now it's nothing.
Is that the veteran minimum? I don't know what the veteran minimum is, but it can't be much less than that. So I think that's a great pickup for Golden State. You get a veteran. You don't want to mess around with young guys there, and I don't know if they're going to start him, if they're going to bring him off the bench, but whatever his role is, I think that's a good signing for Golden State at that money.
Absolutely. Now, back to our two guys, I want to just kind of by comparison, you think about the money, and some people have said it was outrageous. I know some of my more casual NBA fan friends have saying, what the hell are we doing that much for Dellavedova? And I had to explain to them, what the new numbers are. But you look at a couple guys that signed in comparison. Tyler Johnson signed with the Brooklyn Nets. He looks like a decent young player. I mean, honestly, he's got some Dellavedova in him, but I think he's shown far less, and he signed for $50 million over 4 years. So he got more. Ryan Anderson signed for, I think, about $20 million a year with the Houston Rockets. And, is he a better player than Teletovic? Yes, but they do have a similar game. They both aren't great defenders. They both stretch the floor and shoot threes, and the Bucks get their guy for less than half of that. So I don't think Anderson is twice the player that Teletovic is, but you can see that there's an argument to be made that the Bucks got some bargains here, and it's almost a Ted Thompson-esque offseason for them thus far.
Yeah, it's Ryan. His contract is 4 years, $80 million. So that's kind of crazy money. And just because someone else signs people to crazy money, that if it was one crazy money contract, but we could name off 8 or 9 of these deals that have been signed this offseason. And by any measure, at worst, the 2 we signed are market value, and if anything, I'd lean a little bit towards good value. So it's. You gotta spend your money on your salary cap. You've gotta have 12 people to play. You can't roll out there with nothing. So, all things considered, I'm okay with these signings. They're seemingly value, and they certainly, like you said, to me, the most important thing with these guys is the fit. I don't think either of them is going to be ball hog and required to be taking touches from our big three, Giannis, Jabari, Middleton. So that's good. And then at the same time, we didn't overpay them, and they actually seemingly on paper will fit a role that we need on our team. So, we're not breaking the bank. We're not crippling us for years to come. There weren't any 5-year contracts that Drew Gooden handed out this offseason. They're both 3-year deals for both of them, I believe. Yeah. Or no, Dellavedova
4 years.
4.
Dellavedova.
Yeah, but he's young. He's 24, 25.
He's 25.
Yeah, he might be 25. So, but he's only been in the league 3 years because he came from Australia. So he's not as many minutes as some 25-year-olds. So I think they're fine contracts. We can't officially sign them until Friday the 8th. And then Cleveland will technically have 1 week to match. So up until the 15th, Cleveland can match Dellavedova. So we won't know for quite some time. We may even record another podcast before then. If the news keeps flying the way it's flying, we might have more to talk about.
We're going to be leaving a lot on the table after this podcast. There's a lot more that we can
going into this, I said we could easily talk for 3-4 hours, but we don't want to put you to sleep. But yeah, so
what are you saying?
There's I think they're okay contracts. We won't officially know Dellavedova for 11 days from right now. However, it's likely we'll know something sooner than that. We'll at least know inklings of what Cleveland's going to do. It's already rumored they're going to not match, but you never know. Things can change. I don't like to get too far ahead of myself personally. So,
Well, we're talking about big money. There is one more potentially big money contract that the Bucks are going to dole out, and it's going to be probably to one of their own. It was reported this week that it looks likely that once Giannis returns playing for the Greek national team, the next time they see him, basically, which could be this week, it could be next week, that they're going to offer him their basically franchise player designation, 5-year contract, which would be about $145 million to Giannis. We could talk a long time about this if we wanted to. I don't think we need to, though. To me, it's a no-brainer. He's your franchise player. You only get one franchise designation, I believe, as Grand Admiral Dan explained that. So, when we go to extend Jabari, we can only offer him 4 years. But to me, Giannis is clear-cut the guy that you would want to keep around the longest. He's on the ascent to becoming a superstar player, and could be as early as this year. And again, the money sounds over the top, but this is just the way the NBA is right now. Any thoughts on Giannis signing a contract? Good move, bad move, too early?
Absolutely a no-brainer. You don't want to mess around with this. He's done everything right for the city. He's always spoken highly of Milwaukee. As best I can tell, he likes it here. He's on the verge of being that all-star level player. Post All-Star break last year, he put up 5 triple-doubles in the second half of the season last year.
I think it may have even been more.
Yeah, he was on a tear. He set the single season record for triple-doubles by a Bucks player, and that was basically in the second half of the season. Yeah. So if we continue to see that, and he's looking good for his national team, he had another game today where his team won by 25 or so, and he threw up 16 points and only about 3 of everything else, but 3 rebounds, 3 blocks, 3 steals,
he barely played,
3 assists, and probably did it in 10 minutes of time. So, you don't want to mess around with that. Yeah, is there a chance he get injured this season and we wasted some money? Sure, but chances are if he got injured, he'd be back the next year anyway. So you're going to give him that contract, whether it's this year, whether it's next year, doesn't really matter. You might as well show some faith in him and do it now.
And you compare it to, I think Mike Conley signed the richest deal in NBA history this offseason. So that's how you know that this is just kind of the way it is right now, and things will smooth out. And I know the owners, that during the last collective bargaining agreement with the Players Union, they tried to negotiate some sort of smoothing out the cap so you didn't see an offseason like this. And the Players Union was having none of it. So I know that some veteran players are kind of upset about, I'm locked in for this amount of time, and these scrub players are making 3 times as much as I am. Well, you can thank your union for that, because that's how they negotiated it. You're going to see a lot of it next year, too, with the cap jumping up again.
Yeah, we're going to see this for, I think it's 2 more years of cap jump, or is it just 1 more year at this point?
I think the next year is a significant jump, and I think the year after that it'll jump again, but not quite as much.
So
I can't remember how that all works.
The money's crazy. A player like Giannis, when you get the official max designation, their contract is a percentage of the salary cap. So his contract will scale. LeBron's contract will scale. The absolute max contract, they will scale as the salary cap does, is my understanding. I wish Grand Admiral could confirm that, but I'm pretty sure. These other ones, though, your average guy who just signs a big contract, the 4 years, $80 million that Anderson signed this offseason, maybe next year that doesn't look so crazy, because some guy's going to sign 4 years, $120 million, and we're going to be like, what?
Coming off the bench.
Yeah, exactly. Some backup guy. So, it'll be interesting to see how this keeps playing out, but, so far so good, I think, with our offseason. I had something I was going to talk about, and I lost my train of thought. I need to look at your notes here and see if I do. You take over for a minute here.
And, some people that I've talked to are kind of turned off by the money that's being thrown around. And one thing you have to remember is that if you're a fan of basketball and NBA basketball, this is a good thing. It just shows that the sport is prospering when you can negotiate a television contract like this for that kind of ridiculous money to be thrown around. And a good follow on Twitter, Michael Starberry, real GM poster and huge Bucks fan, he actually tweeted out something that I didn't really think about before, and it's, when you look at the money that's going out right now, it could either go to the owners or it could go to the players. And I'd much rather have it go to the players than some already billionaire owners pocketing it. So love the fact that the cap is going up if you're a fan, and don't hate. Don't be jealous.
Yeah, absolutely. And, basketball is globally, a top 5 sport, whereas the NFL, you look at these contracts, you compare them to a quarterback or whatever in the NFL, and the NBA contracts are absolutely bigger. But soccer is obviously worldwide, probably, I believe, still the number 1 sport. Actually, I believe number 2 is like cricket or something random like that, because every Asian country plays it, and there's like a billion people.
Those
in
crazy.
It. There's between China and India where they play it, there's like a billion people in each one. But that said, NBA I think is number 3 in the world. NBA might be number 2.
And on the ascent.
Yeah, and it might have surpassed one of them would be number 2 behind. Soccer is still kind of crazy, and basically everywhere but the U.S. That's like the number 1 sport, and the fans are absolutely insane at times. So yeah, that's I remembered what I was going to talk about with Giannis' contract. You have to imagine he's getting his 5-year contract extension. Jabari's obviously only going to be eligible for the 4-year extension under the collective bargaining agreement, but that's going to line them up expiring at the same time. So it doesn't work out that poorly for either one of them, because they're going to be able to grow together, and assuming Jabari comes back and hopefully is back to 100% this season, you have to imagine a year from now we'll be talking about Jabari getting some sort of extension, whether it's a max extension or some other big extension. It's going to come unless the wheels completely fall off or he gets injured again.
Well, before we close out here, it's going to be a downer. I tend to do that a lot, I guess. But we got to talk about Thon Maker and the controversy over his age. I don't want to spend a ton of time on this because reading about it the last week or so and kind of following the story as it's developed has been somewhat exhausting. It's just these little bits of information are being released and little tidbits coming out. It's hard because when the pick was first made, Thon Maker, it was somewhat euphoric in that I started to buy in that if this 19-year-old kid, I thought he had the 2nd or 3rd highest upside in this entire draft, the things he could do with the basketball. And then we see the reports the days leading up to the draft that some teams have taken Thon off their draft board completely because there were concerns that he was, and this is the big part, significantly older than 19. Not older, but significantly. The Bucks obviously did not take him off their draft board. They went ahead and drafted him 10th. But then we saw a photo of Thon from a yearbook that somebody said that, I went to school with Thon. Here's his picture in our yearbook from 2011 when he was in 12th grade. I graduated with him. And, my initial thought is, okay, somebody's trolling us. This would be obvious to an NBA team doing research. Well, then we see a video of somebody proving this was no Photoshop job or something along that kind of lines. A guy flipping through the yearbook said, here it is. I went to school with Thon, year 12. There were Facebook sleuths that they were looking at all the names and tracking down the people on the same page with Thon. They're all 23, 24 years old right now. So it kind of hit me then that, okay, maybe we've been had. Again, I could go and piece through all the evidence that's come out both ways since then. I generally just follow the money. Who has the most at stake? Who can profit the most from something like this? I've, in my mind, made up my mind that I think he's 23 years old at least. And it appears to me, and you can go on Real GM, you can go on Reddit and read all the evidence for yourself, circumstantial, whatever. It's just, there's an overwhelming amount of evidence that shows that he's older than he says he is. And, it's hard for me to blame the guy. He came from a war-torn country. If somebody offered you a chance to make millions, if you had to tell in what might have been sold him as a white lie about your age, it's hard for me to say I wouldn't do it. But if he is indeed, or if the stories are indeed true that I've seen, basically the timeline would suggest he graduated high school in Australia, took a year off, came over to the United States, and restarted high school. And that is to me, you're complicit in a crime when you do something like that. I'm not saying I want Giannis to be, or Giannis. I'm not saying I want Thon to be burned at the stake. I don't want this witch hunt to continue. I'm hopeful that he can become a good rotational player for us, but it's just kind of sad to think that perhaps the Bucks have been had again, considering it's happened to them twice in the last 10 years or so with Ersan Ilyasova and E when we picked him sixth. But again, I'm not going to sit here and try to harp on you. This is what you should believe. But I've made up my mind, and that's kind of just where I am with it. And again, I do want to shout out, though, check out Real GM. There's an entire thread, and the moderator over there put together a timeline of all the evidence that's come out, and they keep updating it. So if you want to see for yourself all the different things that would lead you to believe one way or another, is he 19, is he 23, that's a good spot to check out.
Yeah, it's coming from where he came from. I would not blame a guy for, you have a chance to make millions of dollars. You came from a Civil War torn country. You've essentially came there with nothing, and this is your chance to be set for life. That said, it's very strange to go through high school twice. It's one thing to fudge about your age or whatever, but to potentially go through high school twice is kind of crazy. That said, there's really nothing we can do. It's not like we're going to get a redraft in the league. He's our player. And like you said, we've had this twice before with Yi and with Ersan. Yi was obviously a failure. Ersan, mixed, I would say. He had some good years.
Second round pick.
Yeah.
He played, I would say, up to the value of what you would want from the second round.
I'd say he exceeded a second-round pick value because a lot of second-round picks never even play in the NBA. So, there were mixed results there. At this point, my personal stance is just I hope he can give us something on the court. If he can, great. 24, 19, whatever. If he provides us something of value for the next 6 to 8 years, these guys. It's not like he's potentially 30. Hopefully not. He can still potentially give us 6 years of great basketball. Definitely less optimistic than if he was 19. That's where the punch in the gut is to me, is that if this kid was 19, you're really like, ooh, what's he going to be 3 years from now? But where he is now, it's kind of, there's going to be some growth from year 1 to 2 to 3, probably due to coaching and learning the NBA game, but that's about it. Other than that, it is what it is that we see. So, certainly killed a lot of my enthusiasm, but he's a Buck for now, so hope for the best out of him.
Well, and it's interesting. I want to give a shout out to some of the fans on Real GM. I was monitoring this it blew up. There was one fan in particular on there. His poster's name is Justin Credible. His real first name is Justin as well. He was actually in Squad 6 with us when it first started, and he
he might listen. I'm not sure if he does or not. I know I'm Facebook friends with him, so
give him a shout out.
Yeah.
But he was kind of asking questions. Should we be looking into this? And because that time people were kind of just, well, we'll take the Bucks' word for it. This is a $100 million franchise that they're going to do their due diligence, and you got to just believe that. And he kind of kept pulling the thread. He was checking in on Reddit. He was doing research. There was fans were calling the school, the Aaronmore Academy that Thon attended in Australia. Like, this was something that fans really just kept pursuing and asking questions, and little by little we're finding out more and more. And I think that that's awesome. I think there's local media in this market that are pretty clueless when it comes to this story. I was telling you, I was listening to a particular radio show. What one of the anchors' takes on this thing was basically, you're a bad fan if you don't believe Thon is 19, and if you look into this, you're a bad fan. And I just think that's horrible. God forbid the fans of a team trying to hold it accountable and doing more. And I can tell you this because I knew more in an hour of following that thread on Real GM of just these little facts coming out than you would think years of scouting and at least months of preparation and digging deep into this guy that a multi-million-dollar corporation or organization would find out. So kudos to the fans that kept asking questions, and that's your right. It kind of reminds me of and not to get political, but people in their government. If you're not holding the people you follow, or you have to hold people to a standard, you have to hold them accountable. And if you don't do that, you're kind of doing yourself a disservice, and you're doing society a disservice. So I got nothing but love for people that ask questions, even when it was unpopular to do so, because Justin in particular was getting a lot of heat from people saying, you just didn't like the pick, you're nitpicking this guy, this is a good kid. Well, turns out he may not even be a kid, or the 19-year-old kid.
Yeah, it's like you said, you've got to hold people accountable. If not, if you're complacent in that, then you're saying it's okay. You're basically giving them the green light to do this. And I certainly don't think the Bucks would do this intentionally. So
no, I honestly think they got had and they're embarrassed, and that's fine.
Yeah.
But because this is another thing I wanted to bring up. The stance has softened. Immediately after the draft, it was Thon is 19. Then, as some of this stuff started to come out, the documentation that we have leads us to believe he's 19. So the wording changes there a little bit, and I wonder why that is.
Right, and the idea that if you ask the question, you're not a good fan, that is just so asinine to me, because no, that's not what makes you a fan. Now, if you're out there actively rooting against him and rooting for him to fail, then I would argue you're not a good fan of the Bucks. Everyone should want, I don't like the Monroe signing. He's a bad fit for Milwaukee. We talked about this at the start of last season. We hope for the best, though. We said we don't think it's a great fit, but hopefully it works out. The same thing with Thon. He likely isn't 19 years old, but I hope he plays well, and I hope he helps bring a championship to the Milwaukee Bucks. That's all that matters. It's in the end, if he contributes, whether it's for 3 years, whether it's for 6 years, whether it's for 15 years, that as long as he's a Buck, I will root for him. But there is certainly nothing wrong with questioning the official story, whether it's the Bucks or your government or whatever. I'm a skeptic by my nature, so I'm always questioning official stories. But I think we didn't want to talk too much about that. It's kind of been played out, at least for those of us that follow on Reddit, on the Real GM forums. It's been talked to death. The media not really doing much about that.
Asleep.
But there was
Charles
another
Gardner,
thing.
nothing. I mean, the Journal Sentinel, nothing. But I think that's because they're kind of in bed with the team. Not to interrupt you. But.
Yeah, no. I was going to change the subject, and we do have two
more.
Trying
to go all positive?
We have two more subjects to really talk about here. You missed one on your last page here.
Yes.
We had the Hammond extension down there at the bottom. John Hammond got an extension, and we have to talk about it a little bit. It's interesting the way this was announced, that it's an extension, but he's officially grooming his replacement, and he's going to move into an advisory role. So there is an end in sight for the tenure of John Hammond as GM of the Milwaukee Bucks.
Hallelujah.
And certainly, if he's on as an advisor helping with the draft, I'm okay with that, though I don't know who got had with this Thon thing, because we had it with E was under John Hammond, or was that right before John Hammond? Yeah, that was
before. That was Larry Harris. He kind of put all his eggs in that basket.
Yeah. So, but he did Joe Alexander. So, John Hammond has a pretty good draft track record, notwithstanding the Thon controversy this year. So,
I got to bring this up because I was talking to a friend of mine, Andy Robbie, friend of the show, been a guest. And I pointed it out to him because I think early on Andy was kind of like, la la la, don't want to hear this, Thon's 19. And listening to Hammond, I saw a video of him the night of the draft after we drafted Thon, and he looked giddy talking to Thon on the phone. And then a couple days later, he was doing a radio interview, and he sounded almost defeated or dejected. I really think he's a nice guy. I think somebody got had, and then, whatever. We're done off that subject. As far as the Hammond extension itself, I do find it pretty remarkable that, as you said, you have this exit plan, and you don't see that in the NBA, and really just in many pro sports in general, where who the next guy is. He's the next in line, and it's amicable.
Yeah. It was strange when Doug Melvin kind of did that with the Brewers, moved from GM into an advisory role in the front office, and hired his own replacement essentially. So yeah, it's very strange. I agree with you that I think John Hammond's a good guy. The results of his tenure don't justify how long he's hung around. It's amazing how he has.
This is going on 10 years now.
It's crazy because I think about it and I'm like, John Hammond's made some really good moves. We've got Giannis because of him. I guess we've got Jabari because of him. Not really. That was kind of an accidental
Jabari
happening
because he was so bad at his job. That's
but
amazing.
and we got Middleton. That was a great trade. Trading Brandon Jennings for what we got. There are certainly a lot of good moves, but then the results on the court just don't justify him being around. It's one of these things where I look at the results and I look at the roster and I say, well, he doesn't deserve to keep his job, but he also doesn't deserve to be run out of town with pitchforks or anything. I have this very sort of meh feeling about him where I'm like, I don't hate the guy and I don't hate his tenure because we've got a very bright future, but he probably should have been fired 4 years ago.
Well, and you're right, because you can look at a lot of these moves in a vacuum, individually and say, that was a good move, that was a good move. But when you kind of take a step back and you look at nearly 10 years, I can't remember.
One winning season, 2 playoffs.
Maybe somebody with a better memory can give me a few names of a guy with not even really a modicum of success at all, continuing to have a job as the general manager of a sports franchise and having nothing to show for it, save for one decent playoff experience and you nearly won a series. I mean, I guess perhaps it's just the bar was so low for so long that it really, for a lot of people didn't matter who was making the calls. But somebody made the comparison or the joke was that, the only things that survive the nuclear holocaust are cockroaches and John Hammond because he continues to find employment with the Bucks. And God bless him. Like you said, it's a nice guy, but at some points you want to see him move on, and they are.
At some point you need results. It's kind of crazy because the entire time, and maybe the reason he stayed around so long is because we don't know the power structure inside the Bucks front office. Maybe as fans we're holding him too accountable versus the owners, both the past regime and the current regime, know who was ultimately making the decisions and know what John Hammond did and didn't do. And maybe what John Hammond did in behind the scenes actually justifies him keeping his job. He just has a title that, as fans, we'd hold him to a higher standard, but maybe behind the scenes he's not held to the same standard. I don't know.
I've heard plenty of speculation that the ownership basically, after a while, gave Kidd it was his show to run. He was making the personnel moves. And again, this is all speculative. And that Kidd was such a disaster last year with the draft picks that he made, with the free agency moves that he made, the trades, bringing in Grievous Vasquez, giving up first-round picks, that they took a step back and said, okay, you're done. Like, you can coach the team, but, we got to have somebody else to make these calls. So I think Hammond is just kind of like in this weird transitional point where we know you're not the guy. This is our new guy, but for some reason, they don't want to just hand it over. It could be a business move, I don't know. But again, you mentioned the power struggle. It seems to be that everything has changed in the last 2 years. It's been such a whirlwind of who was making the calls.
Yeah. And then one last topic before we go. I just want to, OJ Mayo, if you don't know, he got banned from the NBA. And my personal thoughts on this as someone who my parents struggled with drug abuse, addiction and drug abuse are just a fucking bitch. So, whatever you want to say about his time here as a Buck, I hope for the best for him because addiction is not something I would wish on anyone. And because for those of you who don't know the way the ban works, it's not for marijuana. It's not for performance-enhancing drugs. You only get that ban if it's something like heroin, cocaine, methamphetamines, whatever, a serious hard drug. And I've seen firsthand the effects of some of those, and they're not fun. So on a personal level, just want to wish OJ Mayo the best as a person. I don't know that he'll ever play in the NBA again, but I hope he doesn't completely screw his life up. So yeah, that's all I've got on that last topic.
No, I'll kind of piggyback off of that too. Being fans, we watch this, we engage in this. It's entertainment to us. And I think a lot of times it's easy to forget that we will dehumanize public figures because it's something that we see from afar. It's, we're passionate about something, but you're right. I mean, obviously the guy has a lot of problems. There was some reports when he was here that he was having family issues and the whole thing with his weight gain. And yes, people would joke about that, and that's fine to me. But again, it's nice to hear somebody say that. It's not just, well, you sucked on my team, so screw you. You're the worst. Like, I agree with you. I hope OJ Mayo the best. Johnny Manziel, you see it in the NFL. It's becoming more common. So these guys live under a lot of pressure, and you add in giving them stupid money and succumbing to.
Well, a lot of them come from broken families and poor inner city neighborhoods, and lots of their friends in those neighborhoods, they've turned to drug abuse or drug selling because that's some of the only work available for them. And I get it. It's a hard cycle to break. My father, anyone who doesn't know me, my dad has struggled with drug abuse my entire life. And the last time he was locked up in prison, he got a 9-year prison sentence. Served 6 years after good behavior. Came out, he was clean for a few years, but then he fell right back into it. It's not something that...
It's a lifelong problem.
Addiction is a medical problem that it's something you have forever. That's why... these programs like Alcoholics Anonymous or NA, I'm not a huge fan of those programs, but they always make them first. They admit that they are still an addict. Whether you're sober or not, you are always an addict. And, I don't like to see anyone ruin their life through these things. So, it was shocking when I heard that about OJ Mayo. And, I just wish the best for him as a person because, like you said, we kind of dehumanize these people. I fucking hate you or this or that. And the reality is we don't know any of these guys. I'm not in a position, as much as I dislike some of the on-court stuff of any of these guys, I don't know any of the NBA players well enough to say that I legit hate them. And there's very few people in the world that have ever legit felt the emotion of hate because I'm a pretty easygoing guy. So hope for the best for him because that's a messed up situation. And hopefully being kicked out, he can still get the support he needs.
Absolutely. And, not just, you hope he gets back on the court. If he can, great, but just hopefully he can get his life together and find peace and find happiness and all that gooey stuff.
Yeah, so that's kind of a personal issue for me, given my my family history. So I think we covered all our topics for this week, and that was the official start of Season 2, other than the Draft Day special. So thanks for joining us once again. Follow us on Twitter, Facebook, YouTube, iTunes, wherever you're finding us. So I know we're out there in a few places.
We get around.
Yeah, exactly. Update your podcast feeds. We'll be updating. Enjoy us on your ride to work sometime this week or ride home. I know Nick listens to us on his work. He has quite a commute to work. So we will see you again. Well, you'll hear us again soon because...
and hopefully we have a lot more news to talk about, i.e. Monroe, Michael Carter-Williams.
Summer League starting up very soon here. So we'll have Summer League, maybe some more trades. These signings will become official, particularly Dellavedova, where Cleveland could still match, even though it's rumored they're not going to. So we will definitely be back sooner than the last couple of episodes because stuff is actually happening. So, got anything else?
No. Grayson Allen and Jonathan Gian from France. Those are my two guys for the
draft.
I'm a draft guy.
We're talking 2017 NBA draft. This is your official 2017 draft resource. Maybe if we get a slow episode where not a lot has happened, we'll start talking draft early. So, with that said, have a good one.